We had Pfizer, we had Merck earlier this morning. Both of them beat on earnings, at least, although Pfizer wasn't rewarded, at least thus far, in the markets. But there's a larger pattern here, Tracie, that I'm curious about. We'll put a chart out to illustrate it. Companies overwhelmingly are beating on both top line and on earnings, and yet they're not really getting a lot of credit. Here, look at this chart. You can see 72% are beating on sales, 82% are beating on earnings, and yet overall, that's all of them beating and missing. It's only up like less than 0.1% in the stock price. Why is that?
Yeah, so we certainly are seeing that the bottom line is important this earnings season, but the top line seems even more important. And going into this earnings season, I don't think anyone thought that we'd see the top line up 8 or 9%. So it is a little bit confusing that we're not seeing more increase in stock market prices given these very strong earnings. So that tells us one thing, that markets were anticipating a strong earnings season. And they're looking forward and saying, can this earnings level continue? And I think what people are thinking is that this is probably peak earnings growth. Now, that doesn't mean that earnings can't continue to rise. They certainly can. But this growth rate is very strong, and we're extrapolating out a couple of quarters. Yeah. And what happens in a couple of quarters?
So, Kevin, do you agree? And are you getting defensive as a result of if it's an earnings growth peak, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question with the pharmaceuticals is there's been a lot of talk out of Washington about pricing. The one thing that we did see even in this quarter, we're going to continue to see for the next probably 3 to 5 years, biosimilar competition. Enbrel was a little bit weak in this corner. The pharmaceutical companies are really good at cutting costs, but you need to beat on revenue, and that's what you saw out of Pfizer today. They didn't beat on revenue. Abramowicz, which is their new growth drug, really lagged expectations. So there's a lot of headwinds in the industry. If you're buying pharmaceuticals, you're really buying them for kind of low growth and dividends. Yeah. So when we get into a cyclical upturn like we are now, we're talking about energy. The financial stocks have done well. We still, as the economy grows, they'll continue to do well. I think pharma kind of gets caught in a tough spot right now because fundamentals are a little bit challenging, and they are more defensive. And I'm not sure people are looking for necessarily defensive with top line concerns.